Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Richard Burdick, and this is Unity North Atlanta Church. And I want to welcome you to our Wednesday night experience. Wednesday night is a really eclectic time where we come together, and it takes many different forms. And tonight, I'm really excited about the form that our Wednesday night is going to take. Typically, we have a half an hour of meditation. We're going to sprinkle in the meditation tonight with a dialogue with a member of our congregation and a beautiful soul on the planet, Idara Bassey. And she's going to be joining me here tonight, not only in person, but she's on video. Idara and I got together, and I wanted to pick her brain a little bit. I wanted to experience the vast world of her mind, which is incredible, and you'll feel that as much as I do. Let me give you just a brief bio of Idara, and welcome. I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I want to give just a little of the facts, and then we'll get into the dialogue as quickly as possible, because there's a lot of territory to cover tonight. Idara Bassey, Esquire, is a self-proclaimed partner in creating a lawyer life you love. Her lawyer life is extensive. She's been a personal advisor to corporate professionals from various industries and been retained by legal professionals nationwide on matters of executive performance, soft skills training, values alignment, stress reduction, and wellness since 2002. She's been doing this for a very long time. She earned a JD and an LLM in Public International Law from the University of Georgia School of Law in Athens, Georgia, where she was named a Ford Foundation Fellow, followed by a doctoral degree in metaphysical counseling from the world-renowned University of Sedona. The partnership between the world of being a lawyer and the world of, she's actually taught metaphysics at the collegiate level. It creates a very diverse, a very broad perspective, and one that I am delighted to kind of dip into a little bit tonight. Before we get into the videos that we created about a month and a half ago, is there anything you want to say to the people watching or the people in the room?
Well, I wanted to say a big hello to the folks that are tuning in through the live stream. I know that's an option that's increasingly, that we're grateful for during these times. And just want to reiterate how honored I am to be here and to have the opportunity to chat with you all about topics that are near and dear to my heart. So I look forward to seeing how this event's going to unfold tonight. Thanks.
So we're going to go to a video, and we'll pause at a couple of places during our time to have questions. Those in the room who have a question, you can come to the microphone that is live. And those of you online, we're going to also invite you to put into the chat a question you might have, and we'll save some time at the end of our evening for those questions to be answered. And they're all going to Idara, not to me. The wisdom to my right is what we're going to tap into tonight. So we're going to go to that first video, and the first question I asked Idara, and I have her books here, by the way, and I used this as the basis for the questions that I asked her, Reflections of a Mystical Sister. And it's a thin little book, an easy read, but a profound read. And if anybody in the room would like to get a copy and have it signed tonight, I've got just a few copies here. But the first thing I asked her about mystical, what does it mean to be a mystic? How do you define being a mystical sister? And this is what she had to say in our first video.
Everyone has the potential to be a mystic. A mystic is really a person who has decided to look beyond the physical experience for ultimate truth and understanding. And I don't remember a time when I didn't have this awareness, even though I may not have had the vocabulary to describe it as such. I was very fortunate to have been brought up by two spiritual seekers, and my father in particular, who had, in the 50s, late 50s, questioned the dogma that was coming out of the Catholic Church, which he was raised in, and made a conscious decision to move away from that and become a member of the Rosicrucians, which is a very well-known mystical order, and remained a member of the Rosicrucians until he passed away in 2009. And his example was instrumental to me as far as meshing spiritual awareness with the worldly environment. He was a physician, and he maintained a regular meditation practice, so he modeled that for me about how he was able to prioritize his spiritual awareness and his practices with the modern day world, running a busy medical practice and what have you. So that was very impactful for me, and I'm forever grateful for having grown up seeing that example and trying to really impact the way that I originated as far as my own spiritual path.
And so we have a mystical sister here, and one of the things that we talked about when we got together was the idea is, are you born a mystic or is it nurtured? Is it nature or is it nurture? Is it something that we create and that we learn and we grow into, or is it innately a possibility that we all have and it needs to be nurtured and tended?
Yeah, that's a very good question. As I alluded to in our discussion earlier, that was highlighted in the video, I do believe that everyone has the capacity to develop that aspect of themselves. And one thing that I have said in conversations with people, or just among my friend group or my professional circles, that this pandemic, I think, is offering an unprecedented masterclass of sorts in the cultivation of an inner authority, which I think is a really critical aspect of the mystic consciousness, actually. Because when you see, when you're in a world and seemingly everything around you is unraveling, or the institutions that you used to rely on are suddenly a little bit wobbly, and your leaders are doing all sorts of strange things, all these external benchmarks, these external institutions, these external pillars that you used to rely on are no longer a slam dunk as far as their ability to either afford you with a level of validation or a sense of security. You are forced by definition to go within. So I think it's times like this that give you an accelerated give you some accelerated coursework in developing that aspect of yourself. You are looking for truth in new and different ways because the old ways are no longer as available to you, or no longer offer the sense of security that you used to secure. So I think that's really a great example of how it just helps everybody along their spiritual path by definition, because you have to look at different ways of doing things, or approach things differently, because the old ways aren't working the way that they used to.
So we come to the edge of our wisdom, our intellect. We come to the edge of our experience and what we've been taught and what we know. And on that edge, life is going to push us there. That's where we can really discover the depth of who we truly are. And so let's just take a moment, and just a first reflection, let's just take a moment to breathe into that. That each of you, in the life that you have, is right on the precipice. Whatever you're experiencing is driving you to a greater capacity to know your divine self. Take a deep breath with me. Maybe just close your eyes for a moment before we go to our second video, and allow yourself to just entertain and to invite that idea that there is not one person more mystical than another, maybe more awake to that potential. But just breathe into the awareness that a spiritual nature exists at the core of who you are. Accept that. Claim that as the truth. And just what does it feel like? And maybe it gives us different eyes to view the world as we know it today. It is calling us and leading us to a greater capacity to know our divinity. And so it is. And so this next clip, which is a little bit longer, I talked about authenticity, being authentically who we are as spiritual beings, beyond all of this stuff. And so this one, I'd asked Idara about what true authenticity really is in being your authentic self.
Well, I think there's something to be said for living in ways that are in alignment with who you are. I think that's where you derive the real juice from. Because if you are trying to be, there's this quote, I can't remember who said it, it might have been, I ran across it, but they said if you follow the crowd, you only get as far as the crowd. And that is an important understanding to think about, because it's like, well, did you incarnate in this physical body merely to copy someone else? Well, maybe for a time that might be the route that you would take, but then as you grow in maturity and awareness, you learn about things that really resonate with you, that really touch your heart, that may not touch somebody else's, and that's a sign that maybe this is something you're supposed to explore or amplify in your experience. I mean, for example, you may see a mistreated animal and you just cry. There's something there for you. There might be a cause that you can take on, or there might be a role that you're supposed to play in fostering animals or what have you that may not necessarily resonate with me, but hey, if it does with you, by golly, maybe you are charged with that responsibility of doing something with it or moving forward in that way. So I like to think of the world as a symphony, and every single person within that symphony has a distinct note that they are meant to sound. And together, if we all sound our individual notes, we become a harmonious symphony. So it's just, I just think it's just so powerful, because we can become successful if we follow paths that we're not necessarily aligned with. But think of how much more impactful you can be if you're animated with this energy of, this is the task that I'm meant to uniquely carry forward in some shape or form. So I've always been, very mindful of that. It's just like, if you could be successful just kind of going along to get along, think of the different impact you can make if you're animated with an assignment from source. I mean, that's literally what I think about it as, an assignment from source. It's like there are ways that I am in the world that I don't think I can't not be in the world, because I know that there's an assignment that I've been given. And that's what propels you forward in times where are difficult, or times of change like we're in now, or other challenges that you might run across as you articulate or move forward in the path that you are traveling, one way or the other.
So I love that term you used, your assignment from source. And if there's anybody in the room that has a question about that, or anybody online, please put it into the chat. Your assignment from source, I would just be curious, what, as a lawyer, as a teacher, what is your, peeling that onion back, what is your assignment from source? And does it change based on the circumstances that are around you? Or is it absolute?
Well, that's interesting.
Hold
Well,
that a little closer.
Life is, as we all know, or we grow to know, is not a linear proposition. So as you can imagine, the path to getting more awareness about what your assignment is, it's not a three-step, 3 steps to finding your life purpose type of proposition, even though there are a lot of people that would tend to try to make you believe that's something in the offering. I believe it's something that you grow into, and it can evolve. And one thing I think that's really important is to stay open to what that can look like, because what was available to me in awareness when I was in law school, I mean, they're just aspects of practice that didn't even exist when I was in law school. So, you might have this idea about, my world and my life is going to unfold X, Y, Z, and then then life unfolds in a very different fashion. But the thing is to trust in that unfoldment. I mean, something I've been saying to myself and reminding myself very, very often, maybe even on the hour, every hour on the hour, is that life knows what life is doing. And my job is not to refrain from trying to push the river, because we incarnate in this system where we feel that everything can be accomplished by, if we just, have the right amount of discipline, the right degree of will, personal will, and a heck of a lot of, elbowing to the front of the line. And, well, I think we're all finding out that those approaches don't always work. There's this little phenomenon called the Great Resignation of 2021. There are a lot of people who feel like the way that they have been proceeding professionally and personally are no longer working. So, so I think if we can kind of hold on a little more loosely, we probably have a lot less personal stress in our lives, because literally the world is shifting. Our world, the landscape that we are seeing is shifting right before our eyes. We don't even know what's going to happen next week, much less, 5 years from now. So it's funny that a lot of people are resisting the temptation about making New Year's resolutions. Like, what? I just want to stay alive. How about that? So yeah, I think we're dealing with a different animal these days. So.
I kind of liked what the imagery that you used. It's life knows what to do. Life is flowing in the direction of the greatest possibilities and good, and we really can't mess it up. We can sure fight that current as the river is trying to make its way to the ocean, but maybe we need to cooperate with the idea that the water knows what to do and quit grabbing for all the things that are in the river that are actually hurting us when we try to grab onto them.
And I am preaching, I'm preaching to myself, really. Let's be real. The Taurus that I am, Miss Planner, it takes some doing to step away from, the day planner, to, put down the devices and to trust that, the greatest and the best good really are in store, even if you don't quite understand how you're going to get from point A to point B. So I'm learning just along with everybody else.
What's that quote? Life is what's happening while we're making plans, or
Indeed,
something.
Indeed.
So let's take a moment to just reflect on this idea of an assignment from Source. That life, you're not an accident. None of us is an accident, but it's a divine appointment. Take your hand and put it on your heart and breathe with me. And once again, just open your mind and your heart and your spirit and your soul to the idea that you are not an accident, that you are a divine being, the right person at the right place at the right time, to cooperate with life in the right way, that this journey, this human race, makes its way to where it needs to be, for the highest and the best. And the way we know how to do that is to be authentically the expression of life that we have been called to be. When we allow ourselves to be ourselves, we become one with that river, and we all make it home together. And then we have a choice about doing that. Every moment we are given a choice. Do we cooperate with that? Or do we want to hold on to this or to that? Or do we want to fight the current? The next question I asked Idara in our time together was about the power of choice, which is crucial in her book. Next video, please.
Choices are just so critical. And I think about it, one way to think about it that I feel like it's easy to wrap your head around. If you have a set of decision points in your life, every choice point that you run across either moves you closer to being in alignment with that way you're meant to be in the world, or further away. So if so people get overwhelmed. There's just so much information being thrown at us, and especially in this modern day world, social media or what have you. To sift the wheat from the chaff, I think that is it's a wonderful framework to consider. Well, where do I go? What do I do? Like, well, is this moving me closer to the person that I want to be? is this moving me closer to making me available for the way I wish to be of service on this planet, the divine appointment, the way that you get your marching orders from source, basically. I mean, it goes further than just a mere job description. It's an internal knowing and awareness that, okay, there's something for me in this particular venture or this particular way of doing and being. I may not fully understand it, but what can I do, or who can I talk to, what can I read, or what practices or habits can I adopt to make me more available for more instruction? And I'll give you a really good example. I made a decision, I've always joked about this, but I'm pretty serious. But in 2012, I donated my television to charity. And I joke that it is one of my better life decisions. And I'll tell you why. I know for myself that I happen to be particularly sensitive to violent images, the news, the what have you. I mean, and I'm not knocking the need to know about what's going on. This is not this. But the reason why I do this, it's a means of self-care, first and foremost. And two, I feel like if I spend time and energy engaged in that continual watching of violent images or sad news or what have you, I am less available for hearing whatever download Spirit has for me. That's just the way I roll. You know, for some people, it's just like a water off a duck's back. That's fine. Hey, God bless you, whatever. I just know for me that I am not at my best when I have a daily habit of watching television. And I figure, you know, this flat screen could probably bless another family. So off it went, you know, and people who are just like, oh my goodness, you don't have a television, what are you going to... It can't be done, clearly. And, you know, you keep abreast of what's going on. You know, you get the headlines, you get the, you know, the broad strokes of what's going on, and if there's anything else that I need to know, I'm sure 10 people would be happy to run up to me and give me the play-by-play. But otherwise, I just know that is just a habit does not really put me in my best and highest place. And I have to honor that about myself and actually act in alignment with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one choice in the evolving path of Idara Bassey becoming Idara Bassey. If you were to highlight for us the most powerful choice you made, the moment of complete and total decision where you felt like you took a quantum leap in becoming who you are today as the beautiful being that you are. Can you talk about that? Because I'm going to ask us in a moment to go to that place and to reflect upon, I say you return to the mountain, that place where you knew that you knew when you made a decision was the turning point of your life.
Oh boy. I'm not sure whether one of the videos that we'll be highlighting tonight touches on this, but I think my decision to move from Washington, D.C. to San Diego, California, which was a city where I knew not nary a soul. And as you know, life would have it, it happened to happen the day before September 11th. And I think that really changed the trajectory of my entire life. I mean, I without exaggeration. And I think about the thinking that led up to that decision. It was really fueled by an intuitive knowing that something was afoot, basically. I didn't know exactly what, but, and to the degree that I came to the realization that I needed to end my time in the Washington, D.C. area, it was a new way of being in the world, I think, that was most important about that decision or about that time. Because there wasn't any objective evidence that I should be going. It certainly defied common sense. And there were plenty of people around me who felt, why would you do this? I mean, you've got your career here, you've got your house here, you've got your man here. I mean, just a number of objective factors that wouldn't remotely support that decision. But when I did make that decision, and things unfolded the way they did, it's almost like the toothpaste without the tube. I could not be in the world in the same way ever again. And it's not that I doubted the power of intuition, but that single event in my life made it unquestionable that it had to be a source of wisdom that I had to take seriously from here on out.
Now, so it came with a lot of resistance in your life.
Of
The
course.
elements in your life don't do this, and that's quite a leap. You couldn't go much farther in the United States. From Washington, D.C. to San Diego is quite a trek, but I imagine it was a trek that involved a lot of your own resistance. Why am I doing this? A lot of fear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I would have people come up to me and say, "Oh, you're so brave for doing this." I was like, it has nothing to do with bravery. I'm just trying to figure out a way to be a little less miserable in this sensible blue suit that I'm wearing. So, yeah, I mean, but, you know, I would ask myself, I mean, am I nuts to do this? To, you know, hightail it across the country to a city where I don't know anybody, just on the sense that, of an intuitive knowing that something was afoot? Yeah.
So we come to the edge, something is afoot, something is
Absolutely.
stirring from within us, and
Yeah.
it doesn't make any human sense.
No.
You know, but we often teach here at Unity that if your dream and your vision of becoming does not cause your knees to knock a little bit, it's not worth your time and your energy. And so fear becomes the partner. We don't let it drive the boat, but keep it there because it's keeping you on your toes. And so choices, I'm going to invite you to take your hand again and place it upon your chest, those of you watching right now. What is one choice, and ask your divine essence this question, what is one choice that you can make right now that would create a more empowered and authentic life? The voice is speaking. That still small voice is speaking to you. It's calling you to a greater capacity to be yourself, an expansive reality of who you are meant to be. Maybe notice the fear that is there. God, by many names, is calling you to the next chapter, the next step, the next iteration of who you are meant to be on the planet as an authentic being of light and of love. Fear is going to be there, and there certainly will be resistance. But the only voice, I mean, Course in Miracles says, let every voice but God's be still in me now. That will take you not just from Washington, D.C. to San Diego, but that will take you to places that you can't even imagine the goodness that will be waiting for you. We know that together. In order to make those kinds of journeys, we have to transcend the resistance of our own intellect, the intellect of the world and our own intellect that says this doesn't make any human sense. And so this next clip is about intuition, finding that call, that God voice comes from our intuition, the understanding that it is the voice of God.
In 1996, actually, I was in a service at the Hillside International Center with the late Dr. Barbara King. God rest her soul. She was a beautiful person. And I was leaving a service, and I just suddenly had the awareness. It's almost as if everything else around me kind of faded out, and I was just in this awareness that, oh, wow, I know a lot about God intellectually, but there is a knowing that comes from the heart that I need to access, amplify, and explore. And that was a really big aha for me because, again, I come from a family that prizes education, and we don't play about that. But there's an other aspect to knowing that is equally, if not more impactful. And my work with lawyers, which has been very interesting as far as this issue is concerned, because these are people that prize their intellect. They put a lot of time, energy, and money in developing it, and developing their analytical critical skills. So I would never advocate that we toss that out the window. But I thought, there's a whole means of acquiring information. In fact, it expands the definition of what's considered information that does not come from the left brain, per se. And if you put those two aspects together, you come with an integrated whole, a holistic perspective, so you have a more informed basis from which to make decisions with. And I can give you a very practical example, and the lawyers I tend to hang out with, resonate with this. It's just like if you had a prospective client walking into the room, and you had a wave of nausea just come over you at the time that this individual was walking into the room, what would you think? If you were looking at, her stats on the paper, it's like, okay, these are the facts of her case, this is the area of law that I focus on, okay, here's the retainer agreement, call it a day. But that wave of nausea, it's not an accident that wave of nausea came over you at the time you encountered this individual. And even if you don't know what to do with that particular event, which I would consider information, maybe you might call a colleague and say, hey, look, can we do a little bit more due diligence on this person? Can we get some extra eyes on the case facts? You would take some additional steps that would not occur to you if you dismissed that wave of nausea and just said, well, maybe I just had some bad coffee or something. So it's like, there has a very practical application to it, which is what I stressed in my work with lawyers. It's like, hey, look, expanding your definition of what constitutes information will make you a better lawyer. Seriously, because there are things that are available to you or steps that you would take, but for the fact that you're not aware of this particular event that happened at the time that you were at a decision point. So that it's beginning to resonate with my colleagues, because they can they can wrap their heads around the fact that, yeah, I want to make sure that I can be the best lawyer that I can be. Mm-hmm. So slowly but surely, that conversation is starting to resonate a little bit amongst that set. But again, I don't know how not to take those things into consideration. So that's where my background, as far as honoring this part of myself, because I've lived this way for so long, and starting to introduce it to people that may not have necessarily been availing themselves of this level of awareness or this kind of awareness. So it's a very interesting trajectory to see how a way of living that I did kind of practice privately in my own life experience is starting to kind of infiltrate and spread from there. But there's also another bigger part about all this, is that we're in a time of reinvention. Everything is being reevaluated. And the level of consciousness that brought us to this point in time in society, well, by golly, it's not the same level of consciousness that's going to get us out of this freaking whatever this is, that's unfolding before us. So I'm really of the opinion, in fact, that's from Albert Einstein, I'm really of the opinion that, to get all pistons firing, we need to bring as many faculties as we can to the table. So why not pull in the big guys, downloads from spirit? And, I don't have to refer to it that way, depending on what environment that I happen to be in, whether it's your gut or your inner voice or whatever you want to call it. But it behooves you to cultivate additional resources to bring new thinking to bear on situations where the old answers, the old ways of approaching and problem solving aren't serving you anymore. They're not providing new insights. So you're just like, well, I've got to do something different. Why not? why not take a look?
I absolutely love that line, and you're right, it's a paraphrase on Albert Einstein. The same level of consciousness that got us to where we are is not going to help us get out of there. And you hinted that education, in particular higher education, has trained the gut. I use layman's language, the gut out of us. And that you're saying to be a better lawyer, and I would say to be a better minister, to be a better teacher, that all of us, to be a better human being, we have to reacquaint ourselves with gut wisdom, that which transcends our education and our intellect. And we're doing that. Sometimes we go too far, but is it a partnership between the intellect and the gut, the intuitive knowing? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I have to reiterate the point that I made earlier about how the pandemic is serving as a master class on cultivating our inner authority. You just think of when the pandemic really got underway and there was so much confusing information on safety measures or how to proceed or, just basic information that was available at the time as the science was unfolding or as new insights were coming to bear. Where would you turn? Just as a practical matter, you were forced by default to really make some decisions about what your personal comfort level was, what decisions that you feel like you needed to make yourself or to keep yourself and your family safe, and those of that nature, because the world around us was scrambled. Everybody was scrambling. So, and that's the disconcerting place for people to be. I get it, but in times of change, and it doesn't look like we're exiting from this moment anytime soon, we have to get adept with being conversant with how can I say it? What rings of truth? What does truth feel like in your being? Because there's no one going to anytime soon going to walk up to you with a silver platter and say, "Hey, this is your truth right here. I'll just lay it out for you." Just in bullet points and digestible sound bites and that type of thing. That would be wonderful, but that's not happening. And for those of us who are still in the dynamic of looking outside of ourselves for validation, for instruction, or for just somebody telling us what to do, I think you will be in the short term subject to increasing aggravation, to put it mildly, because that is not really available to us at this time. Things are changing. So why not help your evolution along by cultivating, developing these new skill sets that I really think we're going to need increasingly as time goes on?
The song is going through my head as you're speaking, the Bob Dylan song, "The Times, They Are A-Changing." And, that's the one constant we can count on. Life is forever evolving, with or without us. The river's flowing to the ocean, with or without us. And we are trying to go through this time we're in right now, through thinking our way into the answers, thinking our way into the unity, into the peace that we're all seeking. Yet we're finding that it's creating more and more conflict. And that maybe what's called as times are a-changing is that we need to change with the times and drop down into our heart and to make peace, first of all, with change at the level of our heart, but then find that place of love which is beyond our ability to understand it with the egoic mind, which says, "I'm right and you're wrong," or "it has to be my way and it can't be any other way," that there might be a solution in the middle when we meet each other at the level of the heart. So once again, and I hope that those of you online are putting some questions in that are coming up, and if anybody in the room's got one, we're going to answer some of those questions later on. But once again, let's drop down into that heart space. And take that song, "The Times They Are A-Changing." Breathe with me for a moment. And can we meet each other, even over the airwaves, at the level of a heart? We may not agree on how we're supposed to do a pandemic. We may not agree on what religious system is the right one or the best one. I think perhaps right and best are constructs of the human mind that need to be set aside so we can be at the level of the heart. The right one for you and the right one for me. As the tides are shifting, the ebb and the flow of all creation, what is it that I'm called to do to drop down into my heart, into a greater capacity to love, a greater spiritual truth, to navigate the life that is before me? And how do I do that not only individually, but how do we do that collectively as lawyers, as ministers, as teachers, as clerks, as nurses, as doctors, as lay people just walking the earth, this common earth that we have together? There is a great call to drop down into our collective heart. Breathe into that place tonight. So, the times are changing. You're going to hear it in the next clip, that people are leaving their jobs like crazy. They're leaving things behind. And so how do you deal with change from a heart-based perspective? This is our next video.
You have to be honest with yourself and sit and say, do you like what you have created? Are the approaches that you are taking to dealing with change, are they producing results that are favorable to you? If so, God bless you and go forth and conquer. But, there's a phenomenon known as the Great Resignation of 2021. You may have heard of it, you may have not, but, upwards of 30 to 40% of employed professionals in some shape or form are either considering leaving their current positions, shifting jobs, changing. So clearly something is happening, and it's just not a fad. I mean, people are in a state of renovation, reevaluation, and reconsideration, to put it mildly. So I hesitate. I don't think that this is all based on intellectual knowing. Because prior to a year and a half ago, these are people that would have never considered making shifts or changes. So I think there's a contingent of folks, there's a energy that's coming through society that is, let's say, nudging. We've gone beyond nudging. Nudging is not the point. They always say you either heed the nudges of the universe or you wait for the 2x4. So here we are, team 2x4. So you are more than welcome to stay attached to your particular way of being in the world, but I think that level of attachment is just going to produce more and more suffering for you as time goes on. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's a matter of deciding how much you feel like you can take. But why not step back a little bit and entertain a broader set of options that you may not have considered before? As Reverend Richard said, I am not bashing a critical thinking capability. There is a place for it, and I doubt if we're ever going to eliminate it, but just open the door a little wider on door number 2 to see what's behind it, see what might be possible for you. It's amazing how people are landing in places where they did not expect, but are also encountering new joys, new levels of fulfillment, new opportunities, new levels of challenge that they would have never envisioned for themselves but for this thing called the pandemic. So yes, it's not easy. It's not, how can I say it? It's not easy, it's not expected, and change obviously can be disconcerting for everyone. But I think one thing I also want to raise too, and to all the folks that may not have felt like they belonged to a particular niche or way of being or doing, the outsiders per se, which I really consider myself to be among that group, you have actually gotten a head start in this process because you were shaken out of complacency by default. So rather than, watch the folks that are, who are having difficulty going through this change, offer some assistance and support, because you've had a little bit of a head start in creating paths where there are no paths. And that's where we're all at right now. And it's a skill that we're going to have to develop and amplify as time goes on, because this is an unprecedented situation for everybody. So if you've already developed some skill sets, some strengths in manipulating is not the right word, navigating, I think it's a better word. Navigating environments where there isn't a linear progression immediately available, join hands with somebody and say, hey, let's join heads and figure out how this is going to work, because I've had a little bit of a head start here. Nerds are us university, type of thing. And so that I feel like has uniquely prepared several people to make this the moment when they would shine and excel actually in navigating what's around us right now.
I'm going to paraphrase a quote that instilled in me, and I don't know who it was that said it, but I'll find out when we're all done. But it said, I prayed to God to stop the shaking of my life, only to realize that it was God that was shaking my life, that God was the cause of shaking us into a greater capacity to be ourselves. And you said that you're kind of among that group that are the outsiders, that have been shaken out of complacency. Absolutely. And that you're finding kind of your people that are also in that.
Yes.
And we like to teach the idea of service. Go find the people that are also in the same place and join hands, join hearts, and join intentions. Who are you finding these days as you're on an evolving path and dealing with this virus, as we all are, and the turned upside down world, as the world is being shaken? Who are you finding? Who are you hanging out with, and how are you finding strength in a sense of a community?
That's an interesting question, because I could speak immediately to my colleagues in the profession, because that's what I interact with most. But the legal profession is not necessarily known for being particularly innovative. We tend to be largely a conservative bunch. Change is very difficult for them. And the law evolves fairly slowly. But you'd be surprised how quickly people kind of switched that up. Because I am literally, when the shutdown orders were instituted here in Georgia, I was working at a local firm on a project, and day after day, more and more of my colleagues were quitting because, people were freaking out, folks that had children or elderly parents, and, we kind of work in very close quarters, and finally, the supervisor was alerted that, if we don't institute a work from home solution, we're not going to have enough staff to meet the judicial deadlines. And within, in a matter of time, which unprecedented, a work from home solution was instituted, albeit, it's like a 2-week work from home solution, thinking that this is just something that was going to blow over. And well, look, here we are almost 2 years later. But so we've been having conversations amongst ourselves that we could not even envision 10 or 12 months ago. People all of a sudden are more forthcoming about their challenges with mental health issues, People are more forthcoming about their issues with chronic stress. They're sharing their challenges as far as balancing, homeschooling children and meeting their professional obligations. So there's definitely a lot more transparency that we're not really used to seeing, which has been interesting. And now that everybody is, stuck using Zoom, you see all sorts of stuff about people's lives. The cat's walking through the room, or a child is running, chasing the dog. Just all sorts of things. So there's a lot less.
Well, it's gotten very real. Your husband or your wife goes in their underwear behind you as you're zooming.
It's gotten very, very real, and I'm sure everybody's seen the viral video about the gentleman whose child put the cat filter on their Zoom feed or whatever. But yeah, so it's just we used to have this kind of stiff upper lip type of thing, and we all have our sensible blue suits, and nobody has any emotions that they show on any degree of regularity, and that has all kind of fallen away, which has been interesting to see. So so people are coming together to try to help one another navigate this, to deal with this. And there's a whole lot of supportive training and discussions that are developing about soft skills. So it's really quite unprecedented.
So what I'm hearing you say is that could it be that what's happening in the world collectively, we're all experiencing this at one level or another, is for the greater good? That what's happening is causing us to break open and to become more authentic, to become more real, to become more emotional. We teach here at Unity that the divine feminine, the feeling nature, is where we're going to evolve. It is not thinking our way. That maybe that's a wonderful byproduct of what's happening in the world today. This time of uncertainty is causing us to have to access long forgotten parts of ourselves.
Absolutely. I think we're all going to be that much better for it, because all of a sudden we're remembering or being reminded that we really are human beings. When you're in an environment that just really prizes one aspect of yourself, for example, your analytical thinking ability, and we don't remember about the fact that you have an elderly mother or you have a spouse that you had a fight with before you got to work. These are all things that make you who you are, that affect how you show up in the world, in the workplace. And all of a sudden, people are giving each other a little bit more grace to allow people to engage or show up with a fuller perspective of who they really are as people and what their priorities are, people that you love, or people that you're worried about, people that are falling ill. So, so you just really come out more human than when you went in, which is, to me, I think, a very positive development, even though there's an initial awkwardness about things. We're talking about things that we don't normally talk about in the workplace.
So we're not only more divine, which is my world, we're becoming more ourselves as human beings as well.
Absolutely.
The shaking that's going on is a holistic approach to the allness of our being. And I imagine there's some questions about that, because a lot of us are having shaking worlds right now. Take your hand once again and place it upon your heart. And breathe into your life as you know it today, fully human and fully divine at the same time. And that maybe your fears or your anxiety or your uncertainty, maybe your frustration or your not knowing, is actually the portal through which you become more fully human and more fully divine, all at the same time. Again, no accident. Here we are. And here we are has something to teach us, individually and collectively, on our path of becoming and growing and stretching and evolving. Change is urging us into the next expression of who we are meant to be as human beings and as divine beings. Breathe into that awareness right now. And maybe just look with different eyes and hear with different ears everything that's going on in the world when you turn the news on. It's being accessed and received, maybe even invited from a different place. It says, I am about to become, through my anger, through my frustration, through my fear, through my trepidation, letting those human emotions guide us to the highest and best. When those emotions certainly come up, and we're in an uncertain world, and we have 2 more clips. We may not get to the last one, I'm not sure, but this one is all about uncertainty. You know, we don't know where we're going. We don't know. I had the same reaction. Oh, this will be a blip, a couple of weeks. I think I can handle a quarantine for a couple of weeks. And here we are 2 years later, and we don't know when the end is. We're living in uncertainty. Idara speaks in this next clip about uncertainty.
I think, when you're in a construct that is infused with uncertainty, and this is actually a quote, kind of a paraphrase of a quote that I ran across, that when everything is uncertain, everything is possible. So rather than focusing on the fear element of, oh my goodness, all my traditional go-tos are not available right now. I can't go to the football game. I can't go to the club. I can't go get a haircut, a mani-pedi, whatever. All these traditional ways that we've used of distracting ourselves from ourselves are not available. Guess what? It's you and you, yourself, and I. Me, myself, and I type of thing. And I think, if you can think to the beginning of the pandemic, how people were having a hard time dealing with that. And again, I think it really all starts with giving yourself the opportunity to maintain some silence with spirit. They say that meditation is listening to spirit, prayer is talking to spirit, meditation by definition is listening to spirit. There's something to be said for getting that process, getting that practice underway, as imperfectly as it may unfold, because there's no wrong way to do it. But I think for me, that's where it all started. Adopting a regular meditation practice, because that's where you practice amplifying or turning up the volume on this exchange between you and Source. Because when you are too busy, running here, there, and otherwise, you cannot be, the miracles of the universe could be right in front of you, and you would miss it because you are too occupied doing X, Y, Z. So with my late father having a regular meditation practice, I was fortunate to see that, and I myself adopting a practice in 1996, which I cannot imagine my life without in any shape or form. And you will find that these things that you used to rely on for validation, for connection or distraction or what have you, it's not that you can't do those things, and there's not that there's anything bad about those things, but if they are animated with the energy of connection that you get from Source, your experience of the external world is that much richer, it's that much more improved, and you are living more in a aligned fashion because your energy is not just all over the place. You're rooted. Because storms of life, obviously, as you can see, are going to come. And if you don't have that connection, it's like, and my mother tells me this all the time, it's like you're building your house foundation on a pile of sand. So, if nothing else, cling to that and all the actions that flow from that. I was told, I think in my training, I remember some training that I've been at this for quite some time, and I remember a teacher of mine saying that take the next action that's alignment with the belief that spirit has your back.
Ooh, can you say that again, please?
Yes. Take the action that's in alignment with the belief that Spirit has your back. And this is a choice we talked about choices. Choices that are animated with an energy of connection, that a perpetual connection, not something that can be like a car that can be wrecked, a house that can be burnt down, a partner that could leave you. Again, nothing wrong with these things, but I love coming to the table, being fortified, and I'm able to interact with all those external things from a different mindset than if I'm expecting that thing to be my source, because it can't be your source. And that's what I think hopefully people are starting to learn, that they can survive without getting a mani-pedi every week. I mean, I hope so. And, you know, you can live without seeing the game. Or if your internet goes down, you will survive, because there are other things that are in your awareness that you have consciously cultivated and fortified yourself with.
This was my favorite clip of all of them, and it is just juicy. That's a master class in what we do here at Unity North. The master teacher, Jesus, said, "Come apart for a while," instructing us to go to the closet, the secret place of the Most High, and to check out of life. And I like to say that come apart for a while, or in a while you are going to be coming apart. That meditation practice is so vitally essential. All the religious paths, all of the paths that are spiritual, are lead us to that place of silence and stillness. Can you just expand a little bit about the uncertainty of the world as we know it, the chaos that we're dealing with, and how has your meditation practice expanded when things got even rougher on the outside?
Oh my goodness! Like I stated in the clip, I literally could not imagine my life without a meditation practice. It is the thing, or it's really where it all started for me. There are people that come to me and when I'm doing workshops or various speaking engagements, and they ask for advice about how to develop their intuition or how to cultivate a spiritual practice and what have you. And I said, for me, it all started with meditation.
Can you give us some practical? Meditation is a very broad word.
Absolutely.
What does your practice look like?
And the thing is that it doesn't have to be so complicated. You don't have to go up to some mountain in Nepal and sit there for 14 hours a day. I keep it very, very simple. Just concentrate on your breath. It really is not more complicated than that. I mean, there are obviously different paths that people take or practices that they prefer, but I just keep it very simple, concentrating on my breath. And the reason why I keep it simple is that the whole idea, the underlying objective, is to give yourself a break from relying on your other senses. And that's over time, practicing that and giving yourself that gift to expand your other awareness that you don't use on a daily basis because you're so busy putting out fires everywhere you go. And so for people who feel like they can't meditate, maybe there might be some other activities that they might find meditative, like gardening or walking in nature or what have you. But whatever you end up kind of honing in on, find something that draws you in, and that will keep you engaged in regular practice. And for me, like I mentioned, it's really as simple as focusing on my breath, moving away from my normal, powering down the computer, putting down the smartphone, and just concentrating on my breath. It's just vital.
So before you go into the courtroom, make sure you're breathing.
Oh, yeah.
Before you walk into the church, make sure you're breathing.
Absolutely.
Before you're about to have a conflict, make sure that you're breathing. You know, the root word of the word breath is the same as the root word for spirit.
Sure.
It's life. It is life itself. So it's remembering yourself as an expression of life. Now, one of the other things that you said there that, and I asked you to repeat it, and I'm going to ask it again, is take the next action that is in alignment with the belief that Spirit has your back. Meditation is my way of doing it. You know,
Gotcha.
knowing somebody has my back or something has my back means I have to have a relationship with
Sure.
it. So meditation is a regular visitation with that person that I know is moving and stirring in the highest direction for my good and my greatness. So that's a question I would ask everybody to ask here tonight. What would be that next action that proves that you have a relationship with the divine and that Spirit has your back? What is it for you, Idara Bassey? What's the next action you can? I know this was a stretch for you to just do this. What's the next stretch for you?
Whew, boy, it's so funny that you asked that because, you know, with the reluctance for everybody to make resolutions this year, I think people have been opting to focus more on a thematic word that they want their 2022 to be about. And I decided just the other day that my word for 2022 would be trust. And I say that because, you know, I come from a very, I'm a planner. I mean, let's just be honest. And the current landscape is challenging from the perspective that, gosh, well, you know, what can happen next week or 3 weeks from now or what have you? And so that makes me a little uncomfortable, as I imagine I'm not alone in that. And just because when I think about my 2021, there are things that happened that I could not ever have planned that have turned out to be some of the greatest blessings for me. And so if I can keep that in my awareness and just remember that, okay, well, you can't plan everything, and that's okay. That's really okay. And if you can just stay in a place of trusting the divine plan and just knowing that however it unfolds, it'd be for the highest and best good, and kind of lead with that energy, I think whatever happens.
That's a consciousness that you have cultivated over many years. The understanding that when something shows up in your field, and this is something we teach in Unity, that life is for us.
Yes.
That this experience is for us, even if it feels uncomfortable,
Yes.
even if it feels like it's shaking me to the marrow of my bones. The trust that needs to be cultivated is this is calling me to a greater expression of myself. Not easy to do.
No, it isn't easy to do. It's definitely something that's still under construction in my life, and I readily admit that. But I think by making my magic word, if you want to call it trust, I even want to be more intentional than I've ever been before about it.
Well, the subtitle, On Traveling Down the Road to Self-Definition, this is the Reflections of a Mystical Sister, and that's the subtitle. That self-definition is forever changing.
Yes.
And you trust that the universe is, when you put the intention out there and the invitation to become more of yourself, guess what? Things are going to show up that are going to
Indeed.
force you into that.
Indeed.
So, and Divine Discontent is the last video, but I want to, are there any questions online? Has anybody put a question online that we can put up on the screen that we can see here? And as the crew is doing that upstairs, there we go. Hey, Chris. Chris is asking, when trying to listen to Source versus maybe hearing yourself or your ego, have you any suggestions for ways to tell the difference? The big question. All yours.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you very much for your question. One thing that I've run across in my experience is the energy that you sense when you first ascertain any voice, basically. I tend to see, in my experience, that the voice of my ego has an undercurrent of fear associated with it, a fear, an urgency, a more kind of a stressful, frenzied type of energy accompanying it. Where when, as opposed to when I'm tuning in more to source, there's a peace that accompanies that. So I think it's worthwhile to experiment in your experience and see how it shows up through your energy field, but those are the distinguishing attributes that I've seen in my experience. I wanted to share that with you as a possible framework that you might consider in your own experience.
Very much in the similar vein is if I find that I have mentally made an enemy of another person or the situation, I'm probably coming from my ego and I have
Gotcha.
forgotten the spiritual truth. Another question from Ramon Hamilton. Are there any suggestions about how to remain more authentic in one's overall life when certain aspects of your life, your profession, requires a level of being unauthentic or inauthentic to be successful?
Ramon, that's an excellent question because I have had to grapple with the same thing myself. I had a very pivotal point in my personal career in 1996 when 1998, pardon me, when I decided to resign from a high-profile position in Washington, D.C. because I had some real moral conflicts with the way the organization I was working for was operating. And I'm not saying that it has to get to that point for you, but that was a choice that I felt like I had to make. And when 2 weeks later, from resigning from the position, I was blessed with an opportunity to work in Morocco through some miraculous synchronicity. I knew that was confirmation that I made the right decision. So for yourself, you need to come into some level of understanding about whether your tenure and your current professional capacity is taking you closer to the person that you really want to be in the world. Because if you think that you can be successful being unauthentic on a day-to-day basis, think of what level of success that you can realize if indeed you are operating for a more aligned place. So there's no quick answer. It's definitely something that many people grapple with, that I had to grapple with, and I'm sure you're doing the same. And you want to give yourself grace to really consider what your next steps may be, but I felt like I could not exist in that at cross purposes to myself, so I made the decisions that I did make.
I believe it was Myrtle Fillmore, one of the co-founders of Unity, who said that we're all going to come to a place in our life where we are no longer content living in the life that we have created, the container that we have created. And I look at my life, and there have been decision moments. I can no longer be the fullest version of myself in this job, in this environment, in this situation. And it's painful. It does involve grief, but growth involves grief and letting go and knowing when to let go and to back up and to step into a new experience.
Absolutely.
Divine Discontent was the final video. We don't have time for that, but we'll say that for another time because I imagine people are going to ask for more of you. And I want to know how people can get in touch with you. We have a slide because the work that you're doing, the coaching that you do, the instruction that you do is needed in this world right now, and I imagine more so than ever. And so there should be a slide up there on the screen of ways that you can get in touch with this wonderful metaphysical teacher, again, a spiritual life coach. And you may need a lawyer. I don't know what field of lawyering you do, but you know, I think it's important that we put that information out there, that Idara is available. One of the reasons I wanted to do this is I wanted more people to know about her and the great work that she's doing on the planet, and more people to understand that there's this wealth right here in the midst of our community and in Atlanta that's available. Do you have any final words for those that are watching before we sign off?
Well, I am so thrilled to have had the opportunity to come and share some thoughts with you all. I my heart is with everyone who is having a challenging time getting through this period in history because, again, we're in an unprecedented moment. And but I trust that if we tune into our hearts, extend ourselves some grace, and keep the faith, we'll find a way through it. And I encourage everybody to to extend a hand to folks that you might see that are really struggling, because this is a challenging time, no doubt, by any means. But again, I wanted to convey my thanks for the opportunity to share with you all this evening, and my wishing everybody peace and blessings.
Thank you so much for being willing to share your heart, your wisdom, and your life with us. I had ordered books. We have a few books here for those that are in the room that would like to maybe get one. You can make just a simple donation to the organization, and we'll make sure we get that to Idara as well. We purchased those books. This is the Reflections of a Mystical Sister. She's got other books you can get on Amazon that I really invite you to make yourself available to. And there's more books coming in. So if we run out of books here, I've ordered at least 20 books that are on their way. They didn't quite make it. I was a little late with Amazon over the holidays to get them. But we do have those books here. And please reach out if this is valuable to you and that you enjoyed this conversation and you'd like to make an offering tonight to say thank you. We really appreciate that. That's why we can continue to bring programs here on Wednesday night and Sunday. And I want to invite you to tune in on Sunday and to be here Sunday. We have the Hakuna Matata African Children's Choir with us. It's going to be a beautiful cultural exchange, a religious exchange. The kids arrived tonight, and they are delightful, beautiful human beings and so full of talent. They'll be with us on Sunday. I hope that you will join us. Some of the ideas that we've talked about here tonight will be in a class that I'll be teaching and leading at the end of January. It's all about acceptance, radical acceptance, what acceptance is and what acceptance is not. You can get information at www.unitynorth.org, but I invite you to take a look at that and think about signing up to carry some of these ideas and let your voice be heard, because it will be an interactive on Zoom, not just lecture. It will be dialogue-based. So I thank you for joining us tonight. If you'd like to make a donation, you can text to give. It's a very easy way to let us know that you appreciate this program tonight and you appreciate the programs that we offer all the time, or mail a check into Unity North or stop by. The staff would love to see you and to hear your feedback about these kinds of programs. So I thank you all for joining us here this evening. Again, Idara, thank you so much for the gift that you are to the world. Have a blessed and beautiful evening, everybody, and it's still okay to say Happy New Year. Thanks again.